Hey, Anime Vanguards fans, welcome back to the channel. If you're tired of wasting your precious time testing out every single unit or scouring through countless forums and videos, then you've come to the right place. Today, we've got the ultimate Anime Vanguards tier list that will save you from all that headache and help you crush your enemies in style. So sit back, relax, and let me guide you through the top tier picks you need to dominate the game. Our list is crafted with care, ranking units based on their overall utility and devastating DPS, so you know exactly which ones to prioritize for your team. Trust me, these units aren't just about numbers, they bring the heat in every battle. If you're ready to dive deep and learn which units will give you that unbeatable edge, keep watching because this tier list is about to change the way you play. I'm quickly moving on to the video and I'm ranking units in Anime Vanguards. Before we start, if you enjoy these types of tier list videos, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Enjoy watching.
A very small portion of the audience is subscribed to the channel. Please don't forget to subscribe if you like these types of videos. Thanks.
The races in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Roku, Sasuke, Rukio, Naruto, Luffy, Ichigo, Sanjo, Jon, Joe, and Vegeta. Alright, let's dive into the wild world of D-tier units in Anime Vanguards. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why would anyone care about D-tier units? But hear me out. There's a certain charm to these underdogs and sometimes they can be a ton of fun to play with. Or at the very least, they'll make you appreciate the good units a whole lot more. Let's start with Roku. Roku is actually pretty decent for the early game. He's got solid DPS and his passive can increase his attack by up to 42%, which isn't too shabby for a rare unit. Then there's Sasuke, who can apply a burn effect that's surprisingly effective even without any upgrades. You might think, hey, maybe Sasuke's got some potential, but don't get too excited. These guys are D tier for a reason. Moving on to Rukio, who has arguably the highest DPS among all rare units. The catch? His attack area is about the size of a postage stamp. So, if you love precision and pinpoint damage, Rukio's your guy, I guess. Now, let's talk about some units that really live up to their D-tier reputation. Take Sanjo for instance. Sanjo's stats are bad and his passive is worse. It's like he just rolled out of bed and decided to give up halfway through training. And then there's Jon. Oh, Jon, if you thought Sanjo was bad, Jon is here to show you what rock bottom really looks like. Seriously, just don't use Jon, not even for laughs, it's just sad. Joe on the other hand is like, hey, I have a decent passive. But then you realize, even with that, there are just better options out there. It's like bringing a butter knife to a sword fight. And finally, we have Vegeta. Vegeta. He's mediocre even by rare unit standards. He doesn't stand out in any meaningful way, and you'll probably forget you even have him on your team. Luffy, however, is a bit more interesting. He's essentially a clone of Ichigo, but with a passive that boosts his range instead of damage. And honestly, that range boost might come in handy more often than you think. Especially when your other options include units like Ichigo, who has a fairly weak attack and a passive that only gives him a measly 20% damage increase. So, there you have it. The best or worst of the D-tier rare units in Anime Vanguards. They might not be winning any battles or breaking any records, but hey, they're here, and they're giving it their best shot, sort of. And sometimes that's all we can ask for. The races in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Gainers, Piccolo, Inosaki, Zenitsu, Gari, and Shinzi. Alright, let's dive into the C tier units in Anime Vanguard. These are the characters that you'll probably want to use early on, but don't get too attached because they're not exactly endgame material. First up, we've got Genos. Now, Genos has his moments. His burn damage is pretty decent, and with his passive, he can speed up his attacks, making him a bit of a firecracker. But here's the deal. While he's definitely better than our buddy Piccolo, Genos doesn't quite have the utility to match up with the more versatile epics. He's a nice to have, but not a must keep. Then there's Piccolo, who's like your go-to guy for epic DPS until you score a legendary. He'll hold his own for a while, and you'll feel pretty good about it, but trust me, you'll swap him out the moment you get something shinier. Meanwhile, Inosaki tries to keep up with a decent passive, but let's be real, his DPS is not cutting it. Why bother when you could have Alligator or Killua dishing out way more damage? He's a fun option, but there's always a better choice lurking around the corner. And oh boy, let's not forget the less fortunate ones like Zenitsu and Gari. Zenitsu might be the weakest epic out there. He doesn't have enough DPS or any standout abilities, especially when compared to the likes of Kakashi or Killua. Gari? Yeah, he's got a line AoE, but the damage is just meh. He ranks pretty low, even among the C tier crowd. And finally, we've got Shinzi, who's basically the just don't character. Seriously, there are better epics out there, and Shinzi is at the very bottom of the barrel. So, if you see him, maybe just pretend you didn't. The races in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Kinaru, Goi, Roku Dark, Grim Wow, Kinua, and Kakashi. Alright, let's dive into the B tier units in Anime Vanguards. Don't underestimate these guys just because they're not A or S tier. They've still got some pretty unique tricks up their sleeves. Let's kick things off with Kinaru. Now, Kinaru's passive might seem like it's more of a curse than a blessing at first, but trust me, that stun immunity is an absolute game changer against some of the tougher story bosses. And hey, his DPS is far from shabby, it's actually pretty solid. Next up, we've got Goi, a straight up damage dealer. Goi's strength lies in his ability to get stronger as more enemies enter his range, kind of like a snowball effect. Plus, he can dodge enemy attacks, which is a nifty little perk, especially when you're face to face with a boss that has a nasty one-hit kill. Not to mention that increased damage over time. Yeah, it makes him a reliable option when things get heated. And then we have the mysterious Roku Dark. This legendary unit has a passive that lets him execute non-boss enemies instantly, which is perfect for thinning the crowd in those intense waves or tougher difficulties. His DPS also packs a punch, making him a great pick even without upgrades. But let's not forget Grim Wow. He might not have the best range or DPS, but his passive makes him an absolute beast against bosses. And if you're looking for some crowd control, Kinoa and Kakashi are your guys. Kinua's got knockbacks and stuns, putting him a notch above Kakashi, who can stun and deal decent damage but has a shorter stun duration. All in all, these B tier units definitely bring some value to the table, even if they aren't the flashiest picks. The races in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Sasuke Hebi, Obita, Vogeta Super, Naruto Sage, Agony, Itochi, and Alligator. Alright, let's dive into some of the A tier units in Anime Vanguards and see what makes them worth adding to your lineup. Starting off, we've got Sosuke Hebi. This guy is a standout among the non-Evo mythics. His seconds per attack, damage output, and range are all top notch, making him a solid pick for most players. But what really sets Sasuke apart is his passive ability, which gives his DPS a significant boost. So, if you're looking for a mythic that can hold its ground without evolving, Sasuke is your guy. Now, let's talk about Obita. He's an interesting one. His passive is kind of a letdown for a mythic, but don't count him out just yet. Obita's base stats are amazing, and that alone keeps him relevant as a non-Evo unit. Then we've got Vogeta Super. He's got a unique passive that lowers his SPA if only Vogeta units are within range, which is pretty cool, but honestly, it doesn't quite put him on the same level as some of the top tier mythics like SJW or Cha-In. It's a fun mechanic, but maybe not enough to justify prioritizing him over the more dominant units. And then there's Naruto Sage. Placement is everything with this guy. His passive can be really powerful, but it requires such precise positioning that it can be a bit frustrating to maximize his potential. Even when you get it right, Naruto Sage feels just kind of okay compared to some of the other mythics. Meanwhile, Agony is a support powerhouse. With his full AoE on placement and knockback effects, he can control the battlefield like no other. Just be ready to invest heavily to bring down his SPA. And finally, Alligator, probably the best epic support unit around. His 50% slow debuff is almost always active, making him invaluable, especially against bosses. Plus, unlike Agony, he doesn't require nearly as much investment. So, if you're looking to strengthen your support game, Alligator's a must-have. The races in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Alucard, Igros, Vogeta Super Awakened, Naruto Six Tails, Cha-In, Song Jinwoo, and Haruka Rin. Alright, let's dive into the powerhouse that is the S tier in Anime Vanguards. Starting with Alucard, this guy is an absolute beast. Even without evolving, he's got that bleed effect, a full AoE attack, and some seriously amazing range. Honestly, he might just be the best non-Evo unit in the game right now. If you haven't added Alucard to your team yet, you might be missing out on a whole lot of damage potential. Then we've got Igros. Now, non-Evo Igros is already a solid pick if you're just looking for some raw stats, but if you're ready to put in the grind and evolve him, this dude becomes truly overpowered. Meanwhile, Vogeta Super Awakened and Naruto Six Tails are, well, let's just say they're a bit of a mixed bag. Sure, they've got decent DPS, but they're missing those special passives that make other units shine. Still, their stats are nothing to scoff at, so they're worth keeping around if you need a solid fighter. And let's not forget Cha-In and Song Jinwoo. Cha-In might just be the best non-Evo mythic around, with her insane crit passive and that killer cone AoE attack. She's ready for any game mode, no problem. Song Jinwoo, on the other hand, is a bit of a sleeper hit. His base stats might be a little underwhelming, but his passive ability really pulls its weight. Plus, you'll want him for his OP evolution down the line. And lastly, we've got Haruka Rin. She might not seem like much on her own, but paired with the right team, she can turn the tides with a massive DPS buff. So, don't sleep on her either. The races in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Igros Elite Knight, Alucard Vampire King, Song Jinwoo Monarch, Cha-In Blade Dancer, Sosuke Storm, Obita Awakened, Haruka Rin Dancer, and Sprint Wagon. Alright, let's dive deeper into the best of the best units in Anime Vanguards. You want to know who the true heavy hitters are? Well, buckle up, because we're about to take a wild ride through the S+ tier lineup. At the top, we've got the absolute powerhouse combo of Igros Elite Knight and Evo Song Jinwoo. Seriously, these two are an unbeatable duo. Evo Igros is an insane full AoE beast who's immune to stuns and gets ridiculous buffs from Evo SJW. And guess what? He returns the favor by buffing SJW, making them a dynamic duo you just can't ignore. If you're lucky enough to get your hands on both, you're basically set for any challenge the game throws at you. Next up, we've got Alucard Vampire King. This guy is the king of bleed damage, and his evolution form is just a menace on the battlefield. Full AoE, massive range, quick attack speed, Evo Alucard has it all. If you're looking for a unit that dishes out serious damage over time while covering a wide area, this is your pick. No one bleeds them dry like Alucard. And for those looking for more raw mythic power, you can't miss out on Evo Cha-In Blade Dancer. She's got the agility and crit to dodge and counter enemy attacks like no one's business. Trust me, her DPS and range are second only to Evo SJW, making her the perfect choice for players who like to be up close and personal. Let's not forget Evo Sosuke Storm. He might not be as flashy as some of the others, but don't sleep on this mythic. His stuns can be a game changer, letting you control the battlefield and deal some serious damage when it matters most. Sure, his stun duration could be longer, but for a support unit, he brings the pain. Then, there's Evo Obita Awakened. While he doesn't have the same utility as SJW or Cha-In, he's got solid DPS and a nasty burn effect that can help you whittle down enemies in no time. And last but not least, we've got the support stars like Haruka Rin Dancer and Sprint Wagon. Evo Haruka Rin might not seem like much at first glance, but her passive that extends the range of nearby units can seriously level up your whole squad. Apply that buff to multiple units and you're looking at some really good results. And of course, Sprint Wagon is the MVP of farming, the only farm unit in the game right now. And let me tell you, you're gonna need him on any squad if you want to keep that cash flowing. So there you have it, folks. These are the S+ tier units you need to aim for if you want to dominate in Anime Vanguards. The video ends here. See you in another video. Don't forget to subscribe.